Well, welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon having no issue whatsoever with Montana State. They get the 59-13 victory. We'll break down that win. Of course, when you take a look at this roster, a lot of young talent looking very good out there. We'll let you know who might shine as the season continues to go on. Plus, a lot of chaos in week one of college football. We'll see where the Ducks will stand once the dust settles. And then finally, we'll take a look ahead at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys, not quite the powerhouse they used to be, but nonetheless, it's a Power 4 opponent coming into Autzen Stadium. But let's get started with our opening drive, brought to you by Guarantee Chevrolet. And with that, we introduce the rest of the crew here. We've got Anthony Newman, George Wrighster, and Aaron Fentress. And Aaron, let's start with you. You're on the Ducks beat this year. You're much more upbeat about this team every time you talk about them. How impressed were you with this 59-13 victory in which the Ducks didn't even break a sweat other than the mascot losing his poor head to start the game?
Well, after George called me out last week for being too nice, I spent the 3 hours at Autzen Stadium waiting for something to nitpick, just hoping for something. And I think there might have been a missed block or something in like the third quarter I was going to magnify. But no, I mean, look, they went out and blew out, dominated while being vanilla against a really good FCS program. Yes, we expected them to win, but you always wonder if there's going to be anything, that jumps out like last year when it was 17-14 in the fourth quarter against Idaho. There was none of that this year. They dominated from the beginning to the end, and they did so being pretty basic. And I think that's the most you can possibly ask for in a game like this. Do I think it told us a ton about this team? Not necessarily, but I give them A's across the board. There was nothing really to nitpick. Now, George and I do the Ducks Confidential podcast, which you can listen to and catch on Oregon Live. However, and on that, I pointed out punting. 0 punting average, but they didn't punt. So, even there I was reaching, but that's all I got to say.
Yeah, George, as you know, these opening games, you're really just trying to control what you can control, especially against an opponent like Montana State. This wasn't a top 10 clash between Oregon and some elite team necessarily. But if you're the Ducks, you want to go out there and play a clean game, stay healthy. Do you feel they accomplished everything that you're looking for in this type of game to start the season?
Yeah, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. Well, they did exactly what we would have wanted to see. Three penalties the entire game, so they played clean. Your stars showed up. Mateo showed up, getting pressure, sacks. Amari Washington showed up. Terrence Green showed up. The young defensive back showed up. The linebacker showed up. This was a total domination in every area that you wanted to see. And now the metrics for explosives vary depending on who you are. But, I was always taught 12 yard rush or longer or 20-yard pass. Now, there were two 24-yard passes and one 12-yard rush, but over the course of an entire game, that is excellent. You didn't allow any shots over the top. One of them was a guy fell down on defense. So you saw what you wanted to see on defense, and then on offense, they were efficient. They caught the ball. They didn't have a bunch of drops. The offensive line wasn't allowing crazy penetration or pressure. It was exactly what you wanted to see.
And I guess, Anthony, the question is, what did we learn about this team in week one that might give us a glimpse as far as what we can expect against stiffer competition? Was there anything you could take away from this game that you learned about this team once the schedule gets a little bit more difficult?
Yes, they didn't make a lot of mistakes. That's a well-coached football team. And usually in that first game, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You got young guys playing their first game. They're a little nervous. The hype. I understand it's Montana State, but it doesn't really matter who the opponent is. You have to play focused football, mistake-free football. And when you play a bigger opponent, you have to have, minimize those mistakes. I didn't see a lot of drop balls. Okay, I didn't see any fumbles. I didn't see any interceptions. Okay, didn't see linemen missing blocks. Didn't see broken coverages, missed tackles. That's what you want to see in that first game. And to me, that's huge because, again, the first game, it's a little different. You're trying to get to, a scrimmage. George, you know this. Jordan, you know this. Aaron, no, you punt, so I don't think you understand that. But I
scrimmaged.
Wait, no, let me finish. That first game, there's always jitters. It's just different because it's you're not hitting your same guy, your buddy. You're not hitting your teammate. So it looked pretty good.
And
Yeah, it's a
and
good
I
point
think
you
too,
make.
one of the biggest things that, and to piggyback off of him, is that it is the first game. So even if you're a vet, you are a little bit nervous because you know that you've been playing against yourself, and truthfully, you have an idea that you might be good, but you don't really know until you go up against somebody else. So this is going to instill a lot of confidence.
Yeah, that's the good thing. You get a chance to know after the game when you finally get some film to break down. And, Aaron, we talk about the clean play and regardless of the opponent, but if you look at last year and a team that was ranked number 1 for the entirety of the regular season, essentially, struggling the first week against Idaho, compared to what we saw here, obviously we're not saying this team is going to be number 1 all season long, but are you encouraged by the fact that this seemed to be a disciplined team that accomplished the game plan, controlled their mistakes, and those are things that'll bode very well when you get to more difficult competition and all of a sudden these games tighten up and every play means even more?
Yeah, I asked Dan Lanning if he could, take anything from winning like this in comparison to last year's game against Idaho. And one of the points he made was that, at least in the Idaho game, you got to see your team deal with adversity early, right? And clearly, coming out of that game, we were all like, oh no, but they went 13-0 before losing to Ohio State, right? So it didn't hurt them. It wasn't proof that they were going to be mediocre. They made some mistakes and they learned from it. Like Newman said, in this game, you didn't make mistakes. So it's a clean start, but that doesn't mean things can't flip, right? That doesn't mean this week they could make all sorts of mistakes, but still win, right? Things aren't necessarily linear. So, but still, I think if we're going to measure it against last year, there's no comparison. They were crisp and clean, no caffeine, to quote an old school jargon from the 70s maybe. And so for that alone, you walk away feeling really, really good about what you saw, especially with all the new faces in the starting lineup. Yeah. Last year you had new faces too, but you had a 6th-year quarterback. This year you got a 2nd-year starter if we count UCLA, and he looked cleaner than Dylan did last year against Idaho.
Well, if we're being honest, right? Last season, week 1 against Idaho and then against Boise State, the problems that presented itself were present all year. There was the inability to run the ball at a high level all year last year. There was times where you would get penetration and the quarterback would be under pressure in the first couple of games. You're like, what the hell is going on with the offensive line? And so to have those problems not present itself in the first game, if the same thing happens against Oklahoma State, I believe that that's more indicative of what you're going to see during the season, because it is the same thing that presented itself last year, and it was a problem all season long.
When we come back, we'll talk more about Dante Moore and his debut for the Ducks. It was very clean, very efficient, representative of what we saw this team in the opening week. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started on Talkin Ducks. Aaron, I've got this. Looking for it. Normally, I keep the Heisman here in the offseason. I know, bizarre place for them to put it at, but do we just hand it to him now based on everything we saw from all the other quarterbacks? Just put him right at the front of the race. He was efficient, 18 of 23, 3 touchdowns. We saw him use his legs. He's got a lot of weapons. This is one of those performances that if you start stacking this up, or, obviously a lot more work to go for Dante Moore. But what'd you think of him finally getting a chance to showcase a full game?
That's bait. That's bait right there. You're trying to test me because that's all ridiculous. Okay, here's what I'm going to say about this. I would describe his performance as boring. Now, don't freak out. Listen to what I'm saying. None of that's his fault. They came in there with their game plan, and it's one of those situations where you have a bunch of stuff in the game plan, but you don't get to 80% of it because you're scoring touchdowns by flicking it out to Kenyon Sadiq, and he just breaks a tackle and scores. Or even the quick screen to Gary Bryant where DeCorian Moore blocked the safety instead of the corner, and the corner got to Bryant right when the ball got there, right? But he just shook him off and ran it in for touchdowns. That's 2 of his 3 touchdown passes where he didn't even throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. But that's not on him. That's not on anybody. But it didn't show us much. We can go back to 2023 and look at his highlights in the first 3 games of the season against weak competition. And he had much more impressive throws in that game because they presented themselves. To me, the best throw by far was the post for a touchdown to Malik Benson, which is a timing post in the red zone. We all know how you got to be on time with those kind of things. Benson ran a great route. He gunned it in there. It was a freaking laser beam. That was nice to see. But other than that, we just didn't get to see him open things up and do anything spectacular because he just didn't need to. So, good showing by him. Not his fault, but I left bored.
Oh, the always bored Aaron Fentress. And what'd you think, Anthony? You've seen a lot of QBs here at this university make their debuts. It's pretty flawless for him for the most part, but kind of what you expected based upon this competition.
Aaron, I was about to jump on you, Aaron, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna stay. Because
cool.
As a defensive guy, I'm looking at quarterbacks. Okay. Sometimes it's not just about the quarterback, that 7-step drop, throwing digs, throwing posts, throwing these curls. No, give it to your dudes and let them run. Let them eat. Quick throws. Get the ball out. His offensive linemen, the Montana State defensive lineman didn't touch Dante Moore. Didn't even come close to him. The running backs, Oregon ran for I don't know how many yards. It's ridiculous. You couldn't stop the running game. So, say this. Well, here's my thing. Okay, if I'm playing a quarterback who can run a little bit and he has a supporting cast, we have our hands full. If I'm playing a quarterback that he has to throw all the time and he has to throw that dig, he has to throw that post, we're not going to allow him to do that because we're going to get to him and we're going to protect the post. We're going to protect the dig. He did what he needed to do. Give the ball to the guys who can make plays, and they made plays.
He did.
George, it's almost as if he sat out last year and learned from Dylan Gabriel as far as just how well he controlled this offense. And to me, I get it. It's Montana State. You're going to be playing much more difficult defenses throughout the course of the year and much more difficult environments and conditions that aren't going to be just sunny and glorious. But as far as just being dialed in and poise and accuracy, it seemed like those key things were there. There weren't a lot of mental mistakes, and I think that's huge and telling as far as what his trajectory could be this season.
Oh, for sure. And he talked about the fact that he was like, man, it's 2 years, long overdue, and all of this stuff. And that lets you know that he's been waiting to play. But he also needed to get his confidence back, to remind himself, I'm that dude. I am him. But when it comes to postseason accolades and all of this stuff, whenever we have seen a coaching staff and a player go out and try to win the Heisman Trophy, it doesn't happen. I mean, the last time we saw it was Caleb Williams in his last season at USC. He had already won a Heisman. He was trying to go for 2. They literally had plans for what happened if he won a second Heisman. So, in USC Stadium, all the jerseys of the Heisman trophies are red, right? They had an agreement essentially that if he won a second Heisman, that his jersey was going to be different than everybody else's. It was going to be gold. And when you try to go out and do those things, it doesn't work out. So the point is that Dante went out and did exactly what he needed to do to win the game. And if you are a big time program like Oregon is, and your quarterback, because remember, it has turned into mostly a quarterback award. If you have the quarterback of a top 5 or top 10 team, you are for sure going to be in contention, and you are going to have in the Big Ten many high leverage moments. And so you have to do your normal stuff. Don't turn the ball over, be efficient with the football, put up some decent stats. And then when those Penn State games come, when the Wisconsin game comes, when Iowa comes, when other big moments come against ranked teams and you show out, that's how you win Heisman trophies. And so you can't go trying to make it happen. It just has to organically happen with good quality play.
Aaron, let's get to the receivers here. We saw a lot of them on the field and a lot of opportunities, but it felt like this revamped receiving core was led by some veterans, and we saw a lot of plays in the open field and spectacular plays where they're breaking tackles. What did you make of this group?
Yeah, look, young guys can rise up to the occasion and deliver, of course. That's what college football more than anything is really all about, right? But you're going to need some vets at some point to do some damage for you. And to see Gary Bryant Jr. and Malik Benson, I just mentioned a minute ago, they led the team in receptions and yards. They each scored a touchdown. And they're the adults in the room. Like one's a 6th-year senior, one's a 5th-year senior from Florida State, Alabama for Benson, and from USC for Bryant. So they've been around. And, I think they're going to be huge for that passing game because I think they're going to be two guys that Moore will be able to rely upon most, next to probably Kenyon, than maybe some of the younger guys who are still going to have to go through some growing pains. So it was good to see those guys step up and make some big plays and sort of establish themselves right away as leaders within this group.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, George, again, it's one game and we still got to get some more live game film, but there's a lot of talent on the field for the most part, and I think there's so much concern about the injuries in the offseason and the departures and the graduations. How do you feel about this core now that you had a chance to see them in a game?
Oh, the talent is undeniable, but the level of competition was not where you can, in terms of get a good gauge of, are they going to be great when they play Penn State? No, but the most important thing is they're getting reps, they are getting experience, and the level of competition is just going to continue to ratchet up. So they got Oklahoma State, then you get Oregon State. So by the time you get to Happy Valley, they would have had, 4 games already. That's almost half a season. So we will know for sure before we show up in Happy Valley how we feel about that crew. But this was a good start to getting that chemistry with Dante, them getting some time on task, which leads to better play down the road.
All right, well, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we've got to talk a little bit more about this Oregon defense and get some more thoughts on how they performed in their opening game. They look pretty flawless, but we'll let Anthony Newman decide. He'll be the final judge and teacher of this. Stick around. We'll be right back on Talkin Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Oregon still coming off that 59-13 victory over Montana State. Not much of a surprise, but it was a clean performance. We've broken down the offense, but Anthony, let's go to you, our resident defenseman on this panel. What did you make of the Oregon defense? Again, it's Montana State, right? You don't get a chance to really get a true gauge of how talented this defense is just based upon the talent gap in this game, but I'm sure you had some thoughts.
Well, I think they did what they're supposed to do, dominate. And for me, it starts up front. I mean, I think Oregon has the top 2 edge rushers in the Big Ten with Mateo and Tatum. But Amari Washington, come on now. he's a dude. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not a big stats guy, but when you look at stats for the defense and you see 2 defensive linemen lead the team in tackles, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And then people were talking about, well, the linebackers didn't really show up. They didn't have to show up because the D line was taking care of business.
They were already on the ground by the time the linebackers.
Exactly. It was block destruction. You get blocked, you get off the block, and you make a tackle. That was huge. Another thing I'm looking at, and talk about, they had 7 tackles for losses. That's getting in the backfield, okay? And three sacks. So, yes, they played outstanding up front. But here's what I'm looking at on the back end. No mistakes, broken coverages, because that usually happens in the first game. Miscommunication. Guys were communicating. If, hey, I have this guy, he goes in motion, I'm going to go with him. That's what I want to see in the first early games, is just that guys are on the same page. The whole secondary is new. Bunch of young guys. We see some youth in there, the corners. Finney, I mean, he's a young dude that's going to be a baller at corner, okay? Kingston Lopa, 6'5" safety. Are you kidding me? So it was fun to watch, but they did what they're supposed to do against Montana State.
I got a stat for you. Last year,
Anthony just said he's not a stats guy. You just say that. He's not a stats guy, and the very first thing you say is you got stats for him.
I'm not talking to him. I'm talking to the viewer. So, so we can say what we want about the FCS program. 1AA is what we used to call it back in the olden times. But this is a Montana State program that last year had 3,000-yard backs who combined for 45 rushing touchdowns. So that's what they do, is they run. And yes, the talent differential's there. You're going up a level, but usually, if you're really good at something, and I like to go back in history. You can go back to when Vernon Adams lit up Oregon State. We can go back to when Vernon Adams came to Oregon, and the backup quarterback who replaced him came here with Cooper Kupp and dominated Oregon's pass defense. And what happened all season? The pass defense was weak. Well, what we saw on Saturday was Oregon completely dominate what another team does and held them to 46 yards on 27 carries.
Yeah.
So had it been 130 yards on 35 carries, that would have been really good, especially given Montana State's history. But well under 100 yards is impressive no matter how you twist it or shake it. So you have to give them an A+ for that. And like you said, the linebackers didn't do anything because there was no one to tackle because they were already tackled. So what are you supposed to do? What are you going to do?
George, any thoughts on this defense?
Oh, I was impressed with the defensive line in particular. It was domination from, we already mentioned Mateo, Tuioti, Amari Washington, but Terrence Green, number 99. Watch this kid. Watch Blake Purchase. These are dudes who are going to be special. And in the secondary, a lot of times people just focus on the coverage. The thing that I loved about the secondary was when they came up to make tackles, they were violent. They didn't come up just to get people down or just because they were obligated to. The safeties, they ran the alley and they showed up with bad intentions.
I was just about to say that. Mike Tyson, bad intentions. Yeah.
And that's the kind of aggressiveness that you like to see, because when people are running the football, whether they caught it or whether they're running it, when they get met by an Oregon defender, the play needs to be over. At that yard line, that's where the play stops. Because we have watched teams that get dragged for an extra 2-3 yards, people fall forward. But what do the great defenses do? What did Georgia do in them national championship seasons? Clemson, when the play stops, you either fall backwards or you fall neutral. Ain't no extra inches, ain't no extra yards. None of that is allowed. And that was the thing. The level of violence and physicality was impressive.
Facts.
Let's get to another interesting tidbit from this game. Coming into the season, many people, Aaron, thought Mekhi Hughes was going to be the starting back, the transfer from Tulane, of course. Just a handful of carries, and now kind of buried on the depth chart. Any information on what's going on there, if there's anything to look into, or was this just simply a lot of people getting reps in the first game?
It sounds like he just got beaten out. I mean, I asked Lanning about what it all means in terms of, not just Noah starting, but the fact that Hughes only got one carry. And he said one of the challenges they're going to have is figuring out week to week who's going to be the bell cows at running back. And it is shocking because he transferred in here as a 2,800-yard back and a proven starter at Tulane. And you don't make this move unless you think you're going to be a big part of the program. Now, I don't think this means, he's the fifth-string running back. But clearly, Noah, sixth-year senior who's been here a few years, knows what he's doing. He's been in the system. He's reliable. And at the very least, he was going to probably be a 1A, 1B situation probably anyway, like he was 2 years ago with Bucky before he got injured last year. But still, it was shocking to see Hughes just get one carry. He did catch a pass, but that's bizarre. And we saw a lot of other kids, young kids, step up and get a bunch of carries, including Jordan Davison, who had 3 touchdowns. So, very interesting situation brewing there. George called it last week. He said he was hearing that Noah was going to start. I could accept that, but I wrote about Hughes and I wrote about Riggs, and they got buried on the depth chart. So it's like, this is part of the problem with all the secrecy, right? You don't know what's going on.
Aren't you the insider, though, Aaron? Aren't you the one going to practice?
I'm coming back to the thing, so I'm not inside yet. I'll get there eventually.
Excuses.
Hey, I'm just telling like it is. I wrote about those two guys. I'm not pointing fingers. I put on myself. But
Aaron,
I still think Hughes will rise up and become a factor. Otherwise, if you're him, why would you burn this year of eligibility? Like, it's a situation where you're
that's a huge decision to transfer, and you're expecting you're going to be starting or maybe at least the second back, but to be only getting one carry in the opening game when you see a lot of other younger backs also get carries, it's certainly a situation worth monitoring as the season goes on. All right, we'll stick around. Plenty more Talkin'
Ha ha,
Ducks when we
George.
come back, as per usual. We'll take a look at week 1 and check out the landscape across college football. It was some great competitive games. What does it mean for Oregon after a couple of top 10 losses? We'll let you know when we come back on Talkin' Ducks. Welcome back to Talkin' Ducks. Time now to take a look at what was a very busy week 1 in college football, and we were served a dandy to start the weekend off. It was Texas versus Ohio State. The Longhorns, first time ever, they were the preseason AP number 1. They started the week off as the underdog, but then some betting happened, and they shifted to the favorites. There was a lot of hype around Arch Manning, and they lose 14-7 at Ohio State. Their offense looked rather anemic, whether you tip your hat to the Ohio State defense or not. Then you had some other big-time matchups. Miami, Mario Cristobal getting a late win over Notre Dame, and Cristobal and the Hurricanes able to close things out in a tight game late in that one as well, too. We also saw LSU looking very impressive. They got the victory over Clemson. And so you take a look at some of these games here, and George, let's start with you because you kind of got your finger on the national pulse here. What did you learn from week 1 across the country and some of the teams that you saw about what we might see this year when it comes to who's going to be in the playoff and who's going to be a favorite potentially?
That I am that I am more and more in favor of trying to figure out not a preseason for college football, but you need to be able to have some inter-team scrimmages because we saw a lot of ugly football. And that Ohio State-Texas game, at the end of it, I was like, neither one of these teams is the best team in the country. But they were also not what they're going to be 4 weeks from now. And we can't project to what they are going to be. We do know that 2 talented football teams played. One of them played better than the other. Arch Manning was brutal for the majority of the game, but it was his first road start. There's other factors into it. I don't think that Sark was very good. And when you look at the national landscape in general, there is more competition for the national title, that the amount of parity is better than it's ever been, which I believe is going to make for great college football, because there were people that thought Alabama's going to win the national championship. I said they were going to miss the playoff, and I said Florida State was going to beat them, and they did. Because you have to understand that one of the biggest factors now is production, your transfer portal, and your culture. And those things can flip on their heels quickly. You can go 13-0, then 2-10, and then back to going to go beat a very highly ranked and talented team in the beginning of the season. That is what college football is nowadays.
Yeah, it was pretty wild, Anthony, because I agree with George. There was a tremendous amount of parity, and whether or not that's just an ugly week 1 game between Texas and Ohio State and getting used to game speed after being in fall camp and just how much of a buildup there was for this game. But I think you look across the country, and at least for the first week, there wasn't really a team that felt head and shoulders better than everybody else in a different tier. And I think that's going to create a lot of excitement and opportunity this year as well, too.
Well, let me say this. I mean, everybody's talking about the game was ugly. In 3 different games, Miami, LSU, and Ohio State, defense wins championships. Hey, they're not scoring 48 points, and that's what everybody wants to see. That's what they think football's all about. It's like basketball, score a lot of points. No, if you're playing good defense, you're doing a great job. And you're keeping that Texas team out of the end zone, who knows how to score. They have weapons all over the place. But Ohio State's defense, no joke. LSU's defense kept them in the game. And Miami, are you kidding me? They have never played defense. And they played some defense that helped them win that football game. So it's not about it's a bad game. It's, I like, if you score 7 points against me, hey, I'm happy because I know my offense, we better score more than 10. so we're good.
Aaron, let me ask you this. With
though,
Alabama tripping up a little bit and how well Ohio State's been looking, Penn State, obviously, Oregon, the consistency, is the Big Ten going to be the conference to beat this year over the SEC?
Well, first, real quick. So the only difference, Newman, is that in this day and age with all these spread offenses and no huddle, 7-10. Like you wonder if it's really the defense or if it's the offense looking bad. So it's kind of a balance there. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. That sometimes people say, "Oh, so-and-so look bad." Well, you have to give credit to their team. And I would say the same thing with Alabama. We got to give credit to Florida State. Florida State had a weird season last year. It's obviously a good program. Bama did not look good at all. But I don't believe we can just take 1 week and say, okay, now everything's changed and it's going to be this way. The games we're talking about where a team won and a team lost, someone had to win, someone had to lose. Right, so that doesn't mean that trend's going to but that doesn't mean that's going to continue the rest of the season. There's going to be other games down the line where the teams that won this week are going to get tripped up by someone else probably. So I'm not going to overreact to the first week, but I did find it fascinating. I do agree with George that there's a lot more parity, and I think NIL has done a lot of that, and we know why Nick Saban left Bama in part because moms want to know where the money was, not the college degree and a path to the NFL. And so those kids who maybe weren't getting that money are going somewhere else. Oregon's even got a few of them, right? So you're seeing the talent spread out a little bit, which is going to create more parity, which is good for college football. But it also means that the team you see lose this week can also rise up and upset someone next week. So let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, don't forget, Oregon looked like garbage against Georgia a couple years ago in that opening game. And then towards the end of the season, it would have been a much different result, I think, if the two teams lined up. More competitive, I should say. That was a pretty good Georgia team that year. Either way, hard to tell what's going to happen from week 1 all the way towards the end of the playoff, but nonetheless, we got some fireworks. Stick around when we come back. We'll talk about the title window for Oregon. Is it officially open for the Ducks, and how can they take advantage of that this season? Do they have enough weapons, enough depth? We'll let you know when we come back. And welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Oregon starting off the year 59-13 over Montana State. 1-0, not a bad start. What you expect from Oregon when looking at the schedule. But we had just spent the previous segment here, George, talking about all the parity in college football that we felt we saw in week 1. And we're going to learn a lot more about these teams as the season goes on, of course. But it doesn't feel like there's this one team that's head and shoulders better than everybody else necessarily. For Oregon, a team that has a tremendous amount of new starters on both sides of the ball, and you've got a new quarterback, is this one of those years where the Ducks can possibly catch lightning in a bottle and treat it as an opportunity of, hey, maybe this is our year? Or is it a little bit more conservative in the approach of, we just want to try and get to the playoff, we've got a lot of new guys, we're building towards something else, our best shot's going to come next year or the year after that potentially?
No, I believe that every year right now, with the way the college football playoff is, that this could be your shot. And that when you have certain things going on your roster, you have an opportunity. This is the most talented roster that Oregon probably has ever had.
You said that last year. Go ahead.
It happened again, Aaron.
It
happened again. So two things can be true at the exact same time. And when you look at a title window, people are like, "Oh, is the title window open?" Yes, it is wide. It is cracked. It is not even like both doors are ajar right now. It is wide open because 12 teams make the playoffs. So there isn't perfection required to get into the tournament. And your goal every year, just like this team's goal should be, is making the playoff and playing well when you get there. And then it's a whole separate season after that. And this title window is wide open. You have a quarterback. You have an offensive line. You got a defense. You have a great coach. You have all the necessary things. You have the resources. The future is bright. This is not just and I've talked to so many college football coaches in the offseason. I've talked to Dabo Swinney. I've talked to Deshaun Foster. I've talked to Jed Fish. I've talked to Kenny Dillingham and so many others, Brett Bielema, all of them in between. They all look at this Oregon program and they're like, it's not a matter of if they will win a national championship. It's a matter of when they will win a national championship. And this could be the year. This is one of those sneaky years where, yes, you're excited about the team, but you're like, okay, we might lose a game or two in the regular season, but if we're peaking when playoff time comes, oh yeah, it could be a problem.
Aaron, do you agree with that?
No.
What?
No,
Aaron, Aaron
look.
just wants to be right because
Shot
he was
that
like,
down so quickly,
the
too.
playoff window
He
will
did.
never be open again after the
No.
14-15 season.
I said the national championship window was
Yes.
closing for the foreseeable future. I didn't say forever. But obviously with a 12-team format, you have more bites at the apple of just at least getting in. It becomes easier to get in. And I've said to you numerous times in our conversations that, yeah, the Ducks should be able to get into the playoffs 50% of the time at least. Okay? So if you're in, you got a puncher's shot. But am I going to say, like you said, they got a quarterback. They got a quarterback who's never won a big game. Ever. He's barely won. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's won a game against
See, look.
a power.
This
Let
is
me
good.
finish. Let me finish.
Aaron is now muted.
No, let me.
Even the
So
internet
wait.
disagrees with what he's trying to say right there. You
Like,
made a point
shut
so
Aaron
bad
up.
that the bandwidth doesn't even want to put up with it.
So to say that the window is here now and we've got a quarterback, that's jumping the gun a little bit, don't you think? You don't even have a legit number one back. You don't have a legit number one receiver. Now we'll see. We'll see what happens 6-7 weeks down the road. Maybe they'll be 7-0, and maybe
So the
Dante
window's
will
not
look
open,
amazing.
Aaron. So the
As of right
national
now, I do
championship
not-
window
there-
is not open.
We have to define what that means. As of right now, I'm saying they're not going to win the national title. I'm 50-50 when I say they're going to reach the national championship game. I've only said it 4 times. I was right twice. I've never been wrong when I said they're not going to win it or they're not going to make it. So I'm 100% there. And I'm saying right now, this team right now, as it sits right, there's no way they're going to the national championship game.
Do you
let alone
understand what
winning
the
it.
odds are of saying a team's not going to win a national championship? If you say that
I didn't
for
say
130
ever. I didn't say
teams,
ever.
you're going to be right 129
But we're only
times
talking about one
that
team,
year.
George. We're talking about one team. And I'm saying not this year. Now, talk to me in 7-8 weeks. We could be sitting there, they're 8-0. They throttled Penn State, they throttled Iowa, and then maybe I can look at something differently. But right now,
Is this
seriously,
one of the better
if we-
rosters in all of college football, Aaron?
According to what? Star rankings?
Oh,
we all
God.
know that
Okay.
we all know.
All
Okay.
right.
Oh, dude, we were told Arch Manning was a surefire number one pick. He just looked like doo-doo against Ohio State. He was missing wide
Is
open
that
guys.
not one of the
Okay,
for Aaron,
so
is
why-
Texas not one of the more talented teams in college football right now?
Okay. Talent and proven production are two completely different things. The Oregon Ducks are completely unproven. There's like 3 or 4 guys who ever proven anything. So for me to sit there and say that, oh yeah, this team, the national championship window is open because they beat Montana State is ridiculous. We'll see how it goes.
That's not why, Aaron.
All right.
Aaron,
Okay,
there
why?
is a thing called a blue chip ranking. There has not been in the college football playoff era, in the BCS era as well, there has not been a team to win a national championship that didn't have at least 50% of its players as 4- and 5-star players.
I wrote about this 12
6
years ago, bro. Old news. I wrote the exact same article
So that
12
means
years
the
ago.
championship window is
No,
open
that
because
doesn't
you're
mean-
one of those few, like 14 teams. That means the window is open, Aaron.
Okay, I don't consider that a window. And here's the thing. Newman's
Oh
going to
my
agree
God.
with me. Here's the thing. Newman's going to agree with me because Newman, like me, needs to see it on the field,
Yes, you need
not
to
in
see
some
it, but
ranking
but
blue
the
chip
window is
charts.
open
Not in
if
some
your
chart.
roster
How
is
many-
good enough. That means the
Dude.
window is open.
Okay, George, you told me Mario Cristobal was building a juggernaut. And look at his recruiting classes. And then and I told you there was smoke and mirrors. Dan Lanning came in here and realized what? It was smoke and mirrors. That's why they got smoked by Georgia, and that's why he pushed a lot of people out. So we've been down this road before. I don't want to hear about recruiting rankings. Yes, you have to have a certain level of blue chip, blah, 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 blah. But you also have to see them play. We haven't seen these dudes play at a high level.
Aaron.
They lost all their starters from last year's team, which got smoked by Ohio State in the playoffs. So is
And
this team better than last year?
and also beat
They got
Ohio
lucky-
State as
they
well.
got lucky
So
being at home.
Don't just cherry pick.
I'm not
what
cherry
you
picking.
want.
When
they
it
got
counted,
smoked by
they
Ohio
got
State.
smoked.
They also
Is-
went 13-0, beat Penn State, who won multiple playoff games. Were number one the majority of the year. If you are one of the teams with a high enough blue chip ranking, you are a title. Your window is open. They
Okay.
have the 4th most talent in the entire country. That
Okay.
means your window is open, regardless of whether
Okay.
you win it or not. It means that you have a shot, Aaron. If you have a shot,
Okay.
that means the window is open. Washington does not have a shot. Does Boise State have a shot? No. Does Arizona State have a shot? No. All of these can be good teams without a shot.
Okay, the last team that went to the national championship from Oregon, what was their blue chip ranking? It was dog doo-doo because they didn't rely on that. Because
that's why they didn't win, Aaron.
Wait, but they
that's
went. They went. So you don't have to have that to go there. And I still need to see it. I still need to see it on the field
to win.
All right.
But you know what? Butler went to the national championship in basketball 2 years in a row, and what happened? They lost both years because you cannot win it without the requisite talent needed to do so.
Okay, just get my $100 ready.
Wow, okay. George and Aaron, that's pretty fired up. Anthony, I got to leave you a little bit of space here, though.
Well, next time, remind me to bring my popcorn, okay? so I can have some popcorn while I can watch that. And to be honest, I'm just looking at Oklahoma State. I'm not looking down the road at championships. The next team, who's the next team that's up? I know you got a defense. I know you got a quarterback that can play. How are they going to do against Oklahoma State? That's my thoughts.
Boo. Boo.
The measured response.
That's great coach talk.
Anthony, thank you for being the adult in the room right now.
Got a fistful of rings and high school championships. All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll preview these Oklahoma State Cowboys and let you know what Oregon might need to do as the competition steps up as we close out shop in this edition of Talkin Ducks. And here we are to our final segment of Talkin Ducks. Oregon getting set to take on Oklahoma State as the Cowboys pay a visit to Autzen Stadium. And Anthony, it's already been a little bit of a rough start to the season for an Oklahoma State program that has really struggled to get back to national prominence over the last couple of years. Their starting quarterback broke their foot in week 1, and now they're already going to have to go to the backup.
Well, yeah, Oklahoma State, I'm not going to say much about them. It's all about Oregon and what Oregon does. And Dan Lanning understands that. And he's going to tell his players, it doesn't matter who we're playing. We have to play at that high level, be very consistent from week to week. And that's what we want to see as the fan base is, can these guys be consistent in their play, not up and down throughout the year? And if we see that high level of play against Oklahoma State with the defensive lineman, Amari Washington, with the quarterback play, with the receivers blocking downfield, running backs, in a competition to start or get playing time, that's going to be big, and Oklahoma State won't have a chance.
Do you agree with that, George, as far as this should be another potential cakewalk game for the Ducks? I mean, Montana State is FCS.
Well, they're going to win the national title, so yeah.
Yeah, of course, right? It's a Power 4 team that's going to have much better athletes across the board, but we just haven't seen the results from the Cowboys over the last couple of years.
And Anthony said it, it's us versus us, Ducks versus Ducks. Like that's the end of the story. You can't play down to your competition. Even if them kids' mama run out there, she got to get pushed out the screen too. She shouldn't have came out there if she didn't want to play. And this is an opportunity for the Ducks to maintain that high standard and really put together the same type of game that they did. This is why the line is at 27.5, 28 points right now. This should be a 30-point victory as well.
Aaron, you got about 45 seconds here. My kids are screaming on the other side of the door. They want me to come play with them in the sunshine. So make your point quick here because I know there's really not a whole lot to this one for you.
You got a struggling program rebuilding. You got a third-year freshman quarterback coming in, Zane Flores, who's not going to be ready for that smoke. You got a running game that's mediocre. I just want to see Dante Moore be able to open up the playbook a little bit more so we can see more from him. But yeah, this should be a rout, say 47-17, which is what my prediction was last week as well.
All right, Ducks are favored by about 28.5, depending on where you look at. According to everybody, we just want to see more of more. Should be exciting. The Ducks taking on the Cowboys at Autzen Stadium next week. That'll do it for this edition of Talkin Ducks. From all of us here, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.